Hi folks, how are you? So we have the new moon in Cancer in about 24 hours, and um, it is time for the new moon video. It has been time for the new moon video for about 48 hours. Um, those of you who've been watching my channel for a while know that I actually prefer to do new moon videos after the new moon, but on YouTube, so often these kinds of videos are presented a few days or even a couple of weeks before by other channels. Um, I just find that when I do and post videos prior to a new moon, they somehow get less circulation, get less access, or whatever it is. Anyway, the situation is what it is, and I'm doing this video now. But much as I like to do new moon videos after the new moon, and I don't think it's a negative thing to get the video then, I realize that it's really not best for the viewership necessarily. So I leave it at that. I'm also, someone had left this comment about, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it really made me think. I'm surprised by how much of my time as a result of that comment spent wondering and wishing and hoping that things had been different. Like, I wish I'd done this 2 days ago, and I wish I'd done this 1 day ago, and I wish there's so much, we carry so much of this wishing that things had been different and wishing something different than what has occurred. It's fascinating. It really made me think about, well, there's nothing I can do about it. Just accept it, do the video, provide the information, and express the intent that you wanted to have it there sooner if you so choose, but you don't have to. It is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it. It is the dark of the moon. In many respects, the fact that we have this new moon occurring tomorrow on July the 5th. I'm doing this new moon roughly 23 hours. It's 4:53 p.m. Pacific time for me, and the new moon is on July the 5th at 3:57 p.m. Pacific time. So I'm doing this roughly 23 hours before. If you hear a kind of ambient hum or something, that's the air conditioning going on. It's a little warm in Los Angeles today. Not super hot, but a little warm. But in some ways, it's a great evening for July the 4th for people in the States who are celebrating or have the holiday, more than anything else, because the moon is dark. It's going to be at its darkest tonight as far as evenings and night times are concerned. So there's not really going to be necessarily a lot of energy to be active for most of us, so if you choose to be somewhere and chill out and watch the fireworks, or just chill out generally and kind of unwind and unplug, it's not a bad way to spend the evening. And indeed, the whole weekend lends itself to some of that. I do think, as always, energy will start to come in after the new moon. The moon is still relatively dark over the weekend again, so I would say the next 23 hours is a great time to exhale, and then after the new moon, go ahead and inhale, and then start to move forward again. The new moon and the full moon 2 weeks later in Capricorn. We now fall into a pattern where the full moons related to the new moon are going to start happening 2 weeks after the new moon, which feels much more cognitively feels much more normal and natural to us, right? Until this particular new moon in Cancer, we've been having the full moons, and this happens, because of the fact that there are 28 degrees separating each lunation and 30 degrees in each sign. At some point, the full moons happen before the new moon. At some point, the new moons happen before after the new moon. The full moons happen after the new moon. Every year, I'm being a little general here, but every year we either have 2 new moons or 2 full moons to kind of, address the balance and things kind of switch on us. But we had a full moon in Capricorn 2 weeks ago on June the 21st, and we have this new moon now in Cancer, the related new moon on July the 5th, and we're going to have another full moon in Capricorn in the last degree of Capricorn on July the 21st, and then until The sequence switches again. We now will have the new moons, followed 2 weeks later by the full moon in its opposite sign, kind of cresting there, and then coming back around 2 weeks later with the new moon. The new moons are related to their opposing full moons, and the full moons are related to their new moons. So when you have a full moon before a new moon, and you have a planet having made its transit through a particular sign and having made the associated aspects, and in this case I'm speaking about Mercury, there's always a sequence as you interpret a new moon to gauge and see, did the full moon happen first? What happened around the time of the full moon? How does the new moon create a 28-day portal of activity and energy to get things done related to the sign in Cancer, sign of Cancer, and specifically for us, the house occupied by the sign of Cancer in our birth chart and what that house stands for over the next 28 days. What is that came to a head around the time of that full moon on June the 21st that now can gain resolution? And those of you who saw that full moon video for June the 21st know that I also talked about how that full moon, which was edgy in the aspects that it created and kind of imprinted, when you look at the full moon 2 weeks from now on July the 21st, that has more going for it with regard to flow and culmination and transformation. It could be that it's a dramatic full moon, and even at times, even to some extent for some people, challenging full moon, given the fact that it is conjunct Pluto. But there's so much around it that is that has flow to it. You know, the full moon itself is trining Uranus and trining Pluto. Trining Mars. Mars is trining Pluto. The sun is trining Neptune. So there's a lot going on with that particular full moon 2 weeks from now that has a certain sense of flow. So from June the 21st to July the 21st is actually a kind of a concrete cycle. And typically when we think of cycles, we think of them as new moon to new moon. And we should. The new moon in Cancer starts the month of Cancer for me till August the 4th, when the month of Leo will start. By virtue of the new moon in Leo being on August the 4th. But there's also, because of these two full moons related to this new moon, one on June the 21st and one on July the 21st, a kind of culmination, something starting with an edginess and an urgency and a desire to get things done and set things in motion that then gets picked up on with this new moon that creates a portal and may reach some sort of a culmination 2 weeks from now. And that'll be nice. The fact that Mercury has already gone through the sign of Cancer and is now in Leo means that something related to, I hate using words like something related because it feels so general, but I have to. This is a general reading. Something related to communication, cognition, processing of information. It could be transactions, it could be sales, it could be, you know, even interviews and YouTube videos and something in the mail, contracts, communication. Right? Let's just travel. Mercury, the winged messenger. Okay, something related to the winged messenger. When, as I've mentioned to you before, we have the Sun, Mercury, Venus, typically traveling relatively close to each other. And when the sun is going through a certain part of the chart, you will have a new moon. Rarely you will have two new moons. Rarely you will have two full moons associated with it. Right now we have this kind of full moon thing going on where we had the June 21st full moon in the first degree of Capricorn, and we're going to have right after the sun entered Cancer, and we're going to have the next final full moon on July the 21st, and the sun will then enter Leo on July the 23rd. But the sequence of the personal planets in relationship to the new moon also set up their own narrative. So in this case, some sort of communication occurs related to the sign of Cancer, the house occupied by the sign of Cancer. Or, if you're looking at the sign of Cancer being in your 12th house, for example, may not occur, because when planets go into the 12th house, they kind of lose agency. Things are suppressed, things don't get articulated, things don't get externalized, for example. Again, just goes to show that this is a general reading. You've got to think of it in the context of your chart. But from a general reading perspective, here, let me just do it this way. From a general reading perspective, Venus entered the sign of Cancer on June the 16th. Mercury entered the next day on June the 17th. The Sun entered Cancer on June the 20th. On June the 21st, we had the first full moon in Capricorn. From within the sign of Cancer, the planets square the nodes, the North Node and the South Node. They trine Saturn in Pisces. They square Chiron in Aries. They trine Neptune in Pisces, and then they move into Leo. So they are trining Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, squaring the North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra, and Chiron in Aries. And after the and the sequence is square the nodes, trine Saturn, square Chiron, trine Neptune, enter the sign of Leo. Mercury has already done all this. Venus and the Sun are in the process of doing this. And indeed, one of the transits that follows very soon after the new moon in Cancer is Venus squaring Chiron. Venus already squared the nodes on June the 26th, trined Saturn on July the 2nd. Now we have the new moon trining Saturn, and Venus squares Chiron on the same day. The new moon in and of itself makes something when Mercury goes through the sign first and enters the next sign prior to the new moon occurring, and you have a full moon on 2 weeks before that's related to the new moon, something related to this new moon has been developing for a while. Something came to a head around June the 21st. Something got communicated or existed in the realm of communication. Have you thought about this? I'm thinking about this is what needs to get done. Or you're thinking to yourself what it has been in the mental realm till July the 2nd. From July the 2nd to July the 5th, where we are, there might be, it's not as if things aren't getting done, but as I've said, 48 to 72 hours before a new moon, especially 48 hours before a new moon, energy can dip. It can become 12th housey. It can become spacey. It can become a little depressed. It can become a little frustrated. I mean, look at what I've been dealing with this new moon video. If I could tell you what I've been doing over the past 48 hours when I've had stuff to do, and not unusual then to get into this place of frustration. If only I did that. Sometimes you have to align with, I'm an astrologer. I should know better. I should know that I have to align with the energy of the moon and put my feet up as much as I can and not give myself a hard time about it for about 48 hours prior to a new moon, and even go easy with myself about 24 hours after a new moon. Because the energy is not going to be there. It doesn't mean that you can't summon it. Doesn't mean that you can't muscle your way through it. But it's tough. And for me, this new moon is in my 12th house. So, I really should honor spacing out. And God knows I've been doing it. But anyway. But then you kind of deal with the resulting other aspects of yourselves, other planets, Mars and Taurus, and the fact that we're still in the Gemini new moon period, and that's looking for a certain amount of closure, and other planetary activity are not necessarily ready to quite give that a break unless they are. So something came to a head around June the 21st, that this July the 5th new moon gives us 28 days to act on. With the new moon, within 24 to 48 hours after a new moon, within a week of a new moon, but for a lot of people between 24 to 48 hours, 72 hours after a new moon, something occurs, something comes up that makes you get into action, depending on where the new moon is occurring. If it's occurring in your 10th house, as it is for Libra rising folks, it could be a job opportunity, it could be a career opportunity, it could be something related to your public persona, your reputation, that needs or demands action, or that there may be an opportunity around. Similarly, if you are Aquarius rising and you have the sign of Cancer in your 6th house, it could be a job opportunity. It could be something related to sorting out something health related that comes up that you can then act on. Thematically, as I said, something came to a head 2 weeks ago with that June 21st full moon you get to act on, and may reach some sort of a culmination with the next Capricorn full moon. That month to act on something related to the house occupied by the sign of Cancer lasts for 28 days. During this time, Venus continues to be in the sign of Cancer, offering opportunities, blessings, harmony, a bridge, relationships, financial opportunities. Again, a lot depends on where the sign of Cancer is in your chart. If you're like me and you're dealing with the 12th house, Venus being in the 12th house, you know, you may feel it, you may not. Venus's energy may be accessible to you, it may not. It may feel like something around this is kind of behind the scenes feeling. It could be that some of these activities feel like they're associated with people who aren't being completely transparent with you. They sit in the 12th house, they're hidden. It can be preparatory. In the 12th house, a lot of the activity is somehow behind the scenes, more yin as opposed to yang. So you've got to, you know, if it's happening in your 3rd house, if Cancer's in the 3rd house, which means that you are a Taurus rising. Am I losing my mind? No, a Taurus rising. Then this could be a little bit more yang. You may be feeling like there are opportunities that come up with regard to how you engage with your immediate community, your siblings, your relatives, the well you live in. There could be opportunities around teaching, skill acquisition, interviews, sales, communication, the use of technology to publicize your work, resumes, interviews, neighborhood. Something could come in over the next, after the new moon, next 72 hours after new moon, a week after new moon, that you feel like you have to act on and get in motion on. That again, something could be related to something that came out to a head around June the 21st and could reach some sort of a resolution by July the 21st. Could be related to something that was in communication and developing. This 3rd house example is a helpful one. You know, even having Cancer in the 10th house or the 6th house. Oh, there's this job opportunity for even in the 3rd house. You know, there's something you need to submit for. Or there's something you can publish in the 3rd house. There's something, there's an idea of something to get engaged with at a kind of a community level, or from a 6th or 10th house perspective, there could be something that was being communicated, but very much still at the level of communication. Should we set up a meeting? Have you looked at the job description? Do you want to audition for this? Do you want to do this, etc.? And Mercury kind of did its bit between June the 17th and July the 2nd, and is done and is gone. In the meantime, Venus and the Sun and the new moon are making their sequence of harmonious aspects to Saturn and Neptune, and edgy, challenging, need to get in action aspects to the nodes and Chiron in Aries. And the new moon gives you a portal now where you get to take action for the next 28 days with whatever it is that Mercury has been setting up and keeping in a communication place, and whatever it is that came to a head 2 weeks ago with that full moon in Capricorn. Venus, as I said, continues to be in Cancer till July the 11th. So for roughly another week or so, we get to have both the energy of the new moon and the energy of opportunity, blessing, financial opportunity, bridge building. Venus also is getting ready to enter Leo, of course, on the 12th, and then oppose Pluto on the 12th. on the 11th, Venus enters Leo, and on the 12th, it opposes Pluto. So as you head towards the 12th, Mercury opposed Pluto on, give me 1 second. We covered this in the weekly overview that I did the last video that I did, or the last video that I did. Mercury opposed Pluto on July the 3rd. So if there was a feeling of some sort of a communication, now the communication is going to be more leonine, whether it occurred or did not occur, or could occur, could not occur. After the 12th, you're going to have both Mercury and Venus in Leo. I know this is kind of taking away from the new moon in Cancer to some extent, but what I'm trying to say is, if there was something that you felt needed to be communicated about, something that was making you uneasy, that had kind of a power-related issue, and you can go back to my weekly overview, my last weekly overview, to look at this. It could be that as Venus gets ready to move into Leo and confront or oppose Pluto, or get ready to serve Pluto as a result of this opposition, it could be that as you head to the 12th, you feel like you have the diplomacy, the right intention, the harmonious relationship building intention to actually say something or communicate something. Sometimes with Mercury, things remain in a mental realm. We're thinking, we're processing, we're feeling the urge to communicate something. And it's nice when Venus follows Mercury, because she can sometimes give us the ability to reach out or take advantage of something in a way that is productive and constructive and harmonious, so that even if we feel like we're addressing something that is a point of conflict, we may, as we head to the 12th, feel like we are just that much more collected in our ability to do so. I hope that makes sense. And part of the reason why I'm including this in this is that Pluto is in the very first degree of Aquarius, and the oppositions to Pluto are happening in the very first degree of Leo. So as the planets go through Cancer, even in those last 4 or 5 degrees of Cancer, we're going to feel that energy building. And it's certainly part of this month of Cancer, that as the planets move into Leo, Venus on the 12th of July, the Sun on the 23rd of July, they will be opposing Pluto. And do not forget, part of the reason why I think it's important to mention it is that full moon on the 21st of July in Capricorn, in the last degree of Capricorn, is conjunct Pluto. And that conjunction is very charged and activated, given the fact that it's being trined by Mars, loosely trined by Uranus. But the full moon in and of itself has to be considered. If you don't want to consider Pluto trining Uranus, you've got to consider definitely that the full moon is trine Uranus. So we'll build on that and develop that, but I wanted to give you this particular flavor. The new moon in Cancer is a lovely new moon. It trines Saturn in Pisces. And we all know what June felt like with the squares to Saturn taking place, as the Sun and Mercury and Venus and the new moon in Gemini squared Saturn. You know, the energy kind of blocked and held by Saturn in Pisces, saying, you can't go by me that easily. You've got to pay attention to what is going on and what I'm trying to achieve and what I'm trying to do and bring your attention to in the Pisces part of the chart. Prior to this particular last week's weekly overview, when I look back to the week prior to this one, there were a few videos on that energy. And indeed, it's been sort of energetically active. Even if the squares are technically done, if a new moon squares a planet, that energy remains encoded for the 28 days after a new moon. It kind of hovers over it. It's lovely. And this is just the nature of the time. We have squares followed by trines. You know, Mars in going over Taurus. As Mars entered Taurus, it squared Pluto. I know that that was a big part of the energy. I think that happened on, like, was it June 11th or something like that? When did Mars square Pluto? My dears, I don't even know if I've got that right now. Easily available. I don't think I do. Irrespective, I think it was like July 11th or something along those lines. Kind of hovered over. It's where a lot of our energy went in the first 2 or 3 weeks till July the 18th. It was 11th of June till June the 18th. A lot of our energy went there. But as Mars goes over the sign of Taurus, it still continues to pull our energy there. The energy may be both goal oriented. It could be there could be a certain amount of conflict associated with it. So with all this kind of edgy energy of June, with this new moon tomorrow on the 5th of July, it does break with it, which is nice. And just looking for something. Give me one sec. Thanks for your patience. Sorry about that. You know what? We'll get to it. Sorry. I was going to say, with Jupiter having trined Pluto, Jupiter's now getting ready to trine the South Node in about a week and a half, in about a week's time. Mars is going to conjunct Uranus on July the 15th, which should be exciting for most of us. Mars then crosses over into Gemini on July the 20th and gets ready to trine Pluto right around the time of that July full moon. It breaks up the energy a certain amount, and it's lovely to think that this new moon in Cancer is trine Saturn, and so it sets up a month, 28 days, certainly till the end of July. By the time we get to the end of July and we get into August, even August 1st, August 2nd, the energy will slow down and we're going to feel Mercury become stationary. Mercury gets ready to retrograde on August the 5th. As I've said, May, June, and July forward momentum, August with Mercury retrograde, time to pause and time to let Mercury reveal to us what we are not completely aware of as fact. Maybe something we are kind of aware of intuitively, but for Mercury to reveal what we need to know before we move forward again. What is real, what is truthful, what is going on. But till the end of this month, and indeed, as far as the new moon is concerned, till August the 4th, we have this lovely new moon trine Saturn, which basically means that there's a flow, there could be a harvest, there could be something to avail of, something to take advantage of, a way for the activity over the next month to be more supportive of the stability that Saturn is trying to bring in the sign of Pisces. A lot of the energy that we are dealing with, particularly over the next 2 weeks, but till August the 4th, is a very harmonious. We have the new moon trine Saturn, and the 3 aspects that it encodes, 2 of those are trines. Jupiter trining the South Node, that happens on July the 12th, but it's close enough as an aspect that we consider it one of the aspects that is encoded into the chart of the new moon. Jupiter ending a 12-13 year cycle, starting a 12-13 year cycle in the Gemini part of your chart, harmoniously aligning with the eclipse point, the South Node, in the Libra part of the chart, where something needs to be released to support the North Node in the Aries part of the chart, which is what we're trying to move towards. So we've had, as the planets have moved through Gemini already, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, they've all trined the South Node in that process. With Jupiter trining the South Node, it's a little bit more momentous. And with Jupiter, it's interesting. I think you feel the energy as Jupiter heads to it, but after the conjunction with Jupiter over the next 12-13 months is when I really feel like changes roll out. It's very rare for me to consider separating aspects. I consider them with the full moon. With the full moon, I look at aspects the full moon was making 5 degrees before it became full and 5 degrees after it became full. Otherwise, typically, I will just look at approaching transits, what is happening as the aspect becomes real. Once it starts to separate, I feel like it loses power. I don't think that it has quite that manifesting energy that an aspect can have otherwise. The other place where I really consider about what is going to unfold is when Jupiter makes an aspect, particularly to some sort of a powerful, when Jupiter conjuncted Uranus on the 20th of April, heading to it was the inauguration of the next 12-13 months of a set of changes that will try and get us to move in the direction that is right for us in the Taurus part of the chart. And Jupiter conjunct Uranus, as I tried to connect that for you to the second half of 2010 and the first quarter of 2011, and asked you to consider what changes rolled out in 2011 and early 2012, can give you a sense of the magnitude of the nature of that change. So Jupiter getting ready to trine the South Node, cooperating with, providing flow, providing a kind of inaugural quality, let's get moving quality. What is the relationship between the Gemini part of the chart and the eclipses? It doesn't trine the North Node, but it does trine the South Node. It is working harmoniously with this transformation, this line of desire, a desired direction that we feel called upon to pursue, that has an element of faith and risk and adventure and feels right, but we know we have to do it in a grounded way, that we became present to March, April of 2023. The desire may have grown stronger May, June, July, August of 2023 to be blocked, so that we became more conscious of what we needed to release between September, but particularly the middle of October 2023 to March of 24. You guys have heard me give you this narrative. That could be something that happened in the middle of February that kind of broke things open for you again. We used the eclipses and Mercury retrograde of late March and April to clarify what direction we needed to move in. Mars, May, June, July of this year, with May and July being easier months, June being the more challenging months, but forward movement. August of 2024, pause, and then September, but particularly October 2nd, especially the middle of November onwards, there's forward movement, but there's also till the middle of April of 2025 is this kind of birth canal that can put those changes in place. So Jupiter trining the South Node, very much part of this energy, and certainly what you may be conscious of in the Gemini part of the chart, the house occupied by Gemini. And if you don't know what that is, or if you don't know your chart, there may be a sense of something ending that creates room for something new. And the release would be in the Libra part of the chart. Something ending would be in the Gemini part of the chart. They would be connected in such a way that it's propelling you and pointing you towards this desired direction in the Aries part of your chart, which could be related to, the Jupiter, to Jupiter's transit through Taurus also, between May of 23 to May 25th of 24, and the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction on April the 20th of 2024. As I mentioned to you, till May 25th of 2024, a lot of the forward movement and the goals and the desires and what promised an opening was related to the Aries part of the chart primarily, because that's where the North Node eclipses were, but also the Taurus part of the chart where Jupiter was doing its transit and where Mars is now. So some of that activity and energy, the energy of pursuing opportunities and taking action and opportunities coming your way, but also the energy of competition and potentially conflict with Mars as we pursue goals and as we seek to concretize and get results. The hunting gathering planet, the planet that goes out there and gets things done and protects what is of value and feeds it and collects resources for it, and sort of male testosterone planet that's pursuing success and pursuing the collection of resources in its activity will likely come up against people, typically, or situations that, even if they don't mean it any direct enmity, are in its way, because Mars is an impatient, give me what I want, this is what I desire, this is what I want planet. And then, he lacks the negotiating ability, the harmony building, relationship building, passivity, wholeness, open to natural flow, a very different relationship with source than that Venus has. And so, as I say, with Mars, assertive, not aggressive, but Mars right now is keeping that Taurus energy alive till July the 20th, with getting ready to conjunct Uranus on July the 15th. And of course, as we get closer to that date, we'll talk about that. So Jupiter trine the South Node is one of these harmonious aspects encoded into this new moon that is trine Saturn. The other lovely trine, which is a little over 5 degrees, but I'm still including it, is Mercury trining the North Node. Mercury in Leo trining the North Node in Aries. So we have support from the planet of communication and the kind of so-called primary lucky planet, Jupiter. Although I have warned you that with Jupiter, it's really ending a 12, 13-year cycle and giving you the ability to create an auspicious new beginning, a lucky break in the Gemini part of your chart right now, the house occupied by Gemini. That's how that energy, I find, is primarily felt. It isn't felt, in my experience, evidentially, based on the work that I do, based on the charts that I read, in the conventional way. Oh, Jupiter is going over your second house, you're going to make lots and lots of money. Oh, Jupiter is going over your 10th house, you're going to get a promotion. Or Jupiter is going over, your fourth house, and something amazing is going to happen in your home. With Jupiter going over the fourth, I will most likely see an ending that then gives you the ability to move towards something that really speaks to your heart, residence-wise, often. But it's about that opening. It's about that lucky break. We've got Jupiter trining the South Node. We've got Mercury, the planet of communication, from Leo, getting ready to trine the North Node. And that trine, let me see if I have a date on it. It's actually on July the 8th. So Mercury is moving pretty fast right now. And so even if at the time of the new moon, it's really just slightly over a 5-degree separation, by July the 8th, it's going to trine the North Node. So between Mercury trining the North Node and Jupiter trining the South Node, the planet of communication, what is being communicated, opportunities being communicated, talked about, discussed, and with both Jupiter and Mercury, travel, dare I say, for some people, related to, as a stepping stone, maybe. Remember, my darlings, the North Node in eclipse, this direction that we want to move in, the energy of it may have started on April the 19th of 2023, maybe even because we had 2 new moons in Aries in March and April of 23, just as we have 2 full moons in Capricorn occurring in June and July of 24. So it could be something that started up in March and April as an articulated direction you wanted to move in that gathered momentum. That process doesn't end till the end of the first week of June in 2025. So it could be that as a result of this Cancer new moon, and with these 2 trines that are speaking directly to the eclipses, both of which are planets related to travel, a lucky break, communication, over the next 4 weeks, this idea of moving towards that direction. What are the next steps? What is the next stepping stone? Is there an invitation? Is there an opportunity? What are the doors that remained open between the middle of March and the end of April? And what are the doors that closed? What felt to you either very directly or very clearly as moving in that desired direction in the first 2 weeks of June, or even subtly but clearly? It may not take you to your destination just yet, but there might be, as I said, this greater flow in July, as I've been maintaining. And this particular new moon encodes that and starts that process. Really, at this point in time, by the time I'm done with this video, within 22 hours, enjoy. And the fact that it's happening on a Friday, you may not start to see this seed and sparkle, and depending on what you do and how active you are over the weekend, till next week starts to roll around, and you might find that the wheels are starting to turn again, and the things that kind of creaked to a kind of silence and less energy, and oh, I should have gotten this done and couldn't, and I'm just constantly scrolling social media or whatever it is that you're doing to kind of wind down and space out right now, in the dark of the moon, as on July the 4th, as you head to the 5th, the wheels then will start to creak again. And some of those may well be providing you communication and very clear indications of moving in that desired direction, in terms of actually starting the process of moving in the direction, because we've got communication and travel indicated by these two planets, Jupiter and Mercury. Or that could be travel, but that could also be, bottom line is, there's greater flow. During June, a lot of what was encoded towards paying attention to the Pisces part of the chart, where there's been a certain amount of fogginess and crisis that may have come to a head in 2017, accelerating through 2014, 2015. And since March of 2023, we are either being asked to strongly structure artistic or spiritual goals in the Pisces part of the chart, or actively stabilize around loss and theft and gaslighting and whatever the nature of that fogginess was. And so it pulled our energy back to that part of the chart. Now it's really nice to have the new moon trining Saturn in Pisces and supporting that structuring, as opposed to being blocked by it, needing to take some sort of action. Now the action flows more freely, and we already have Mercury trining Saturn, and we've already had Venus trining Saturn. I know I kind of stop here, and you guys are like, what is doing Venus trine Saturn on July the 2nd? I was just looking for that date. Mercury trine Neptune on July the 2nd. So now we have the new moon kind of trining Saturn, opening that, and we've got Jupiter trining the south node, and Mercury in Leo trining the north node. The Mercury Leo trine happens, as I said, on July the 8th. The Jupiter south node trine happens on July the 12th. And they're both encoded into this new moon chart. So we may start to feel the wheels turn again towards, with greater flow, about moving in the direction that we've been wanting to move in since last year. And the process does not get completed, my darlings, till the end of June next year. Now, action related to the change in the move may really be what is at the heart at this kind of birth canal we enter mid-November of this year to mid-April of next year. But we're going to be actively asked to start releasing again in the Libra part of the chart, with that Libra South Node solar eclipse on October the 2nd. So August we pause, September we start to move again, October onwards the focus is as much, if not more, on releasing what we need to release to move towards the direction we want to move in. And starting the middle of November, it could very well be that the actual change that we're trying to make is done by the end of April, and things really settle by the end of the first week of June, but for some people it might take until then. And part of this is also with the North Node, as I've said, and the eclipses and where we're meant to go. You just don't know how things are going to turn out. You just don't know what is actually going to develop. The North Node, as I've said, has a tendency to promise more than it delivers. It's in the process of leaning in that direction that the growth happens. You must avail of those opportunities, even if some of the results related to those opportunities are disappointing. The North Node has no way of pulling you forward without appearing shiny or knocking on your heart, or kind of giving you this desire to move in this direction. But then there's also reality to things. And for some of us, it could be that we consider this direction, and by the time we get to the end of this year, we're like, you know what? I've gotten whatever I need from that. I'm going to stay where I'm at. I don't see. If you're staying, there's a very strong and a very powerful incorporation of whatever this desired direction is that you've been trying to move in, and moving towards it and seeing what it gives you. Right now in July, as I said, in May, June, and July, the things that are driving us forward are the doors that remained open by the end of April as opportunities that we availed of and that we are moving towards. The second thing that is propelling us is what closed, and what could have, as a result of which, put some urgency under us to take action, because we want to avoid a crisis. Someone lost a job, someone had a financial shortage of something stopping, or these kinds of ways that the universe has of forcing us to get in action because a certain flow is stopped, a financial flow, a job flow, a relationship flow, a breakup, ways that are challenging and that kind of knock us out a bit, but are one of the primary sources of change in our lives. And when, of course, we're dealing with something challenging, we're dealing with the challenge of it. And it's only sometimes when we look back and think, oh, that was the only way the universe could have engineered that in order for me to actually walk through this particular door, which I so love and so like. I was just thinking about this today, about a particular job, talking about 2010, 2011, and how certain things transpired and what was happening at the time, and what seemed so both positive and exciting, and what seemed so stressful and challenging. And had those stresses, had some of those things not been there, had it not felt like, you know what, all signs are pointing to this ending. It was a pretty stressful situation for all of us. The new beginnings could not have happened. So it's just, this is what we're propelled by: opportunity, desire, and necessity, and the need to get into action to stop something from completely breaking down, or a situation from really becoming an out-and-out crisis. It's the kind of thing that propels us. And I would urge you, with everything that I'm telling you about this new moon, to continue to be in action, acknowledging that what it is that you want to move towards right now has an act of faith quality, and it is very likely that something concrete has not materialized in such a way that you can completely rely on it being there by the end of the year, by the middle of next year, but is present enough that all you can do is continue to move in that direction. And all you can do is try to prevent the crises that you need to prevent by taking care of your relationship needs, your financial needs, your employment needs, or whatever, your health needs, wherever the crisis is, and kind of continue to move forward. In August, unless you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, for the rest of us, it'll be time to pause. And even if you do have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart and finds you more decisive and ready and clear about what changes you want to make, you'll be contending with the fact that people around you are going to be like, I don't know what's going on. I didn't know this was real and that was real and blah, blah, blah. And then things start to move forward again. And much more after September till June of next year. There are going to be stops and starts and problems and challenges and all sorts of things. There are going to be all sorts of different flavors of forward movement and not forward movement, with Mercury retrograde, then Mars retrograde, then Venus and Mercury retrograde. All of that happens between the middle of November of this year to the middle of April of next year. With the eclipse of release kind of on October 2nd of this year, with December 2nd playing an important role or a date there. September is really forward movement, and then after October, the nature of change, the change actually starts to happen and choices actually start to get made. So whatever you're doing from an act of faith perspective will concretize one way or the other, or will manifest in a specific way and start to show those signs of manifesting as we head into September and past that. But right now, the best you can do is move forward. And there's so much flow to the new moon trining Saturn, Jupiter trining the south node, Mercury trining the north node with this particular new moon. And with the full moon 2 weeks from now even though it's a pretty dramatic full moon conjuncting Pluto, but you've got the sun trining Neptune. And at the time of the last full moon on June the 21st, the full moon and the sun were squaring Neptune. So now you have, at least with the sun, it turning into a trine, and with the full moon, a sextile. And you've got the full moon trining, as I said, Uranus, and Mars trining Pluto and the full moon. Get back on the horse, people. Get back on the horse. Let's go. Let's try and make things happen. And as I said, moving towards something and making something happen can mean both moving towards it, and it can mean making sure that you're releasing what you need to release. If you are going towards something, you're going towards a job, you're going towards a location, you're going towards something you want to incorporate in your life, there's probably going to be a corresponding release, and you've got to take care of both those things. You can just, depending on the nature of what you're doing, just run in your jammies and catch a plane or catch a train. But for most of us, there's going to be the preparation of getting onto that train, and there's going to be the preparation of sorting out where we're at in order to do that in a comfortable manner, so that both things are being handled. What needs to be released and managed in point A, and if we're trying to get to point B, how do we prepare to do that as well? And the next 4 weeks are a great time to start to accelerate that process, admittedly, as an act of faith. Not all the aspects that are going to be made during this month. Now, this is a little bit different from May. In May, give me 1 second. Let me just make sure I'm not bullshitting you here. Well, in May, we did have Venus squaring Pluto and Mercury squaring Pluto. We also had really exciting conjunctions. Venus conjuncting Uranus, Venus conjuncting Jupiter. Gosh. You know, we may not have, as I said, May was very much walking along that diving board. June was commit, come on, commit, take action. And now with July, July has so much momentum that even if you were holding on to the diving board in June, you're going to be off the diving board. And as I said, July is about starting to jump into the pool and start to swim to the other side. It's not about getting to the other side. That doesn't happen till next year, completely. End of first week of June. So May did have some, but still, some of those squares to Pluto were not as dramatic as Mars squaring Pluto on June the 11th. I was right. How could I forget that date? July does have some edgy transits as well. Venus, the third aspect, I should say, encoded into this new moon is a Venus squaring Chiron. Venus in Cancer squaring Chiron in Aries. So relationship-wise, financially, some action needing to be taken in the Cancer part of the chart to allow Chiron to continue its healing in the Aries part of the chart. The new moon solar eclipse in Aries on April the 8th was conjunct Chiron to the minute. Chiron provides us the opportunity to come back to our primary selves, our unwounded self, our unconditioned self, to be more completely and entirely us in the way that we move towards what we want. And Venus squaring Chiron suggests that something financially, something relationship-wise, something opportunity-wise stands to be blocked unless we attend to this healing and coming back to ourselves in the Aries part of the chart where the opportunity sits and lies. Now, Venus squares Chiron, the exact date for that, do I have that? Pretty soon, actually. Venus squares Chiron on the same day as the new moon. Glory be. At least the primary hit of the aspect will be, and actually, you know what? It wouldn't surprise me. On the heels, the two things that concern me in terms of the challenging aspects during the month of July are these squares to Chiron and because the sun is going to be doing that as well. Oh yeah, the sun is going to be squaring Chiron, and luckily I think the squares to the north node, the sun squaring the north node is done. Yes, the sun has squared the nodes. So after Venus squaring Chiron in Cancer, in the sign of Cancer, the only other aspect is going to be the sun squaring the nodes. No. It's going to be the sun squaring Chiron. Sun has already squared the node. So Venus squares Chiron on July the 5th. The sun will square Chiron during this month of Cancer. But then the other thing that is going to happen is that Venus is going to oppose Pluto. The sun is going to oppose Pluto. And we are going to have that full moon on the 21st that has all these trines embedded into it, with the sun opposing Pluto. So we're going to be there's something, we're going to be much more conscious this month. The flow is there, but a certain amount of uneasiness. Remember the weekly overview I did last week? I called it uneasiness with that opposition, these oppositions to Pluto coming up. With Pluto, if you think squares can stop a personal planet, an opposition is really a stare down. It's a tug of war. And so Pluto is going to want the planets as they head to the oppositions to serve its transformation. The good news is at the time of the full moon, both the full moon and Pluto are together, strengthening each other. The full moon is bringing some light, bringing issues related to this Plutonian transformation to some sort of a head. I think that it is likely that as you head towards July the 12th with Venus opposing Pluto, that if there was some sort of communication of the last week or 10 days or with Mercury, that, there's awareness as we move forward during the month of July of what could block us. What I said to you for so much of the latter part of 2023 and early 2024 was the opportunities sit in the Aries and the Taurus part of your chart, the houses occupied by Aries and Taurus in your chart, where you feel this desire, where you feel this push towards a path, a pull towards a path that is right and more unique for you. The houses occupied by Aries and Taurus in your chart. The obstacle, the crisis that can spill over if it is not attended to is, of course, in the Pisces part of the chart. With Saturn there, we have the help, but we've got to obey, work with, embody Saturnian energy to incorporate the lessons that contributed to us creating part of that crisis, set our boundaries where they need to be, pay attention to what is real and being revealed to us, take the actions that we may have been putting off to kind of stabilize that part of the chart. All of that energy is active, and it needs to be done concurrently, because if it isn't, it could spill over into a crisis that then ends up preventing us from being able to, or creating blockages and obstacles towards us moving in this desired direction. This month in July, some of that comes from the sign of, because Venus square Chiron is embedded into this new moon chart, we may be very aware as we head in the direction that we're meant to, that our ability to move towards an opportunity, our ability to have harmonious relationships, even move to, it could be a creative opportunity because it's Venus, it could be a monetary, a financial opportunity, has to honor and has to incorporate the kind of healing that Chiron has been trying to do in the Aries part of the chart that was so completely embedded into the North Node eclipse cycle that we are under since April the 8th. Whatever it is that we're moving towards between April the 8th and, let's say, the middle of September, when we have the Aries full moon, actually, excuse me, the middle of October, when we have the Aries full moon. Whatever it is that we're trying to, the solar eclipse cycle that we're currently in, that is expansive, that is making us move forward, that has presented us with opportunities likely in March, April, and May. Closed doors, open doors, which doors are open, which direction am I moving towards? There's something about, out of the three eclipses, April the 19th of last year, April the 8th of this year, March the 29th of next year. It's this April 8th eclipse of this year that's the most powerful, because it's calling on us to act from our completely integrated self and to not bring in wounds, patterns that are self-sabotaging, hurting us, not are disabling us from showing up in a powerful way, in an ability to manifest way, to address those things, to heal from those things, to go back to the kind of point of power that we came into this world with, related to the Aries part of the chart and this eclipse and this direction we're trying to go in. We're going to feel that need to incorporate that and to honor that and to actively move towards that healing very much during this May, June, July period till, let's just say till, we can say till the middle of October, but let's just say till that October 2nd solar eclipse in Libra, when the focus is much more on releasing as opposed to moving towards. This video, I hope you found it useful. Typically, my videos will end at an hour mark, but this is going to go a little longer. But I don't put a time limit on stuff, so we'll do as much as we need to. I'm kind of almost done. With Venus square Chiron, I've already talked about the positive stuff. The Pisces part of the chart, that could threaten to sabotage things because it needs attention. You've got the new moon trining Saturn. You may very well be planning to and be in a place where you can take action to help Saturn stabilize the Pisces part of the chart, so a crisis from there doesn't derail things. But Venusian energy, financial, relationship, opportunity, being blocked by Chiron saying, whatever you need to do has to allow me to heal you in your relationship to move forward in a certain direction. What does that healing need to look like? Because Venus square Chiron is happening tomorrow, it's active right now. You could very much have been in a space. And for me, it's a collective narrative. You can't just isolate. The reason why I'm talking about this is because all of these aspects tell a story together. And it's a relevant story. It is the story that you're here to hear as a result of this video. You're not here to hear, this aspect in isolation, and then this aspect in isolation, and then that, no. All these transits and aspects work together. So July is a month that has a powerfully propulsive quality. But there's a real awareness with the oppositions to Pluto, with Venus square Chiron embedded into this new moon, and with the sun eventually getting ready to square Chiron. There's going to be a real awareness of the fact that you need to somehow reclaim your power in a situation and help Pluto with this transformation that it is trying to make in the Aquarius and finish up in the Capricorn part of the chart. And if that sounds too esoteric to you, and like, Avi, I'm not an astrologer, I don't know what that means, what you just said, think about it more with regard to what is it that has been brewing over the past 10 odd days that has been making you feel like, oh, this could create a problem. This could create a blockage. It could have themes of, I'm referring to that uneasiness that I referred to in the weekly overview I did earlier this week. That uneasiness and the need to deal with that uneasiness and the need to deal with what is at the heart of that uneasiness and take action around it, but from a healed, empowered place, could become an important ingredient of July. There could be not only awareness of, this is the direction I need to move in, but here are the potential obstacles and challenges. There could be a much greater awareness and presence of these obstacles and challenges than in May, for example. June just had a kind of a sense of blockage anyway. Now that you're starting to move forward, you could really feel like, oh, This is great. There's flow here, but this is what potentially threatens it. The Pisces part of the chart concerns me less for once, because I feel like whatever it is, this crisis, this fogginess, this nebulousness that has been present since 2012 and reached a crisis 2016, said you have the ability this month to take action proactively to help Saturn. But the square to Chiron with Venus embedded into this new moon and with the upcoming oppositions to Pluto, Venus on the 12th, the Sun on the 23rd, but with that full moon on the 21st very much emphasizing it as well. But the full moon offers a kind of culmination and release. It could be that you feel like, you know what, there's something that you could do. This could be potentially something to consider. Now, I'm not talking to each of you individually, so you've got to just figure out what works for you and make your own decisions around that. Okay, this is a general reading. But it could be that as Venus gets ready to oppose Pluto on the 12th as this week goes by, you find a way through relationship building means. It could also be a communication. It could be that you finally have the words around something over the course of this week, this coming week till the 12th, that you were thinking about articulating and addressing before as you headed towards July the 2nd. And that it somehow, if it comes from an empowered place and it honors Chiron in Aries, where it is that you need to act from a healed, complete, whole place, peacefully with the right intentions, but in an empowered way, not in a fearful way. With Chiron and the wounds it creates, it's about our conditioning. It goes back to childhood. What happened? What happened often enough? What happened, if not often enough, significantly enough that it meant that there was a loss of power and a loss of empowerment in the Aries part of the chart? How has it affected you since then? Chances are that it's a pattern. You may have been very present to this pattern, been conscious of it and thinking about it for the past 10 days, maybe even over the past 5 days as we do this video with Venus getting ready to square Chiron tomorrow. You may have the opportunity to incorporate that, communicate it in a certain way, in such a way that maybe by the 21st, it reaches some sort of feeling of resolution or ending. It may not be complete, you know. As I said, even at the start of this video, it's not a question of fixing everything because there's certain things that can't be fixed. I can't go back and do this video yesterday and give it to you. And who knows, maybe with the flow of whatever's happening right now, I'm doing this video at the right time. It's just very characteristic of the new moon to kind of feel despairing and to feel, and part of what I'm thinking about is how often do I do this? How often do I carry a feeling of talking about Chiron? How often do I carry a feeling and walk around feeling inadequate, or like I'm not doing things at the right time, or this is not good enough, and that's not good enough, this should have been done before, and this I know myself well enough to know that it isn't an overly assertive or self-beating thing, but even mildly, it's an energy leak. And it's a pointless energy leak because either one learns from it and kind of tries to do things differently, which is always a challenge, kind of breaking and incorporating new habits, or else you just let it go and you can't go back and fix it. So with this Venus opposition Pluto, Venus square Chiron, I'm trying to offer a potential solution here. You know, focus on that healing and that self-empowerment and what needs to be done, ideally to build bridges and safeguard opportunities, considering the fact relationships, the quality of our abundance is related to the quality of our relationships. And Venus is very much about what we value and what our values are and what we're nurturing, the flame that we are nurturing. In some ways, it could hold the opportunity that is going to help us get to the direction that we want to get to, symbolized by the North Node in Aries. And after all, Venus in Cancer is squaring Chiron in Aries, which was conjunct the last North Node solar eclipse on April the 8th, not just to the degree, but to the minute. It was an absolutely exact conjunction, at least at the time of that new moon in Aries. I know that the exact timing of the eclipse can vary slightly, or can vary, period. So it could be that we decide to put something in action over the next week, 10 days, as we head towards the 11th, 12th, that can help come to, if not a resolution, as I said, some sort of a culmination, some sort of an ending. We can't go back and resolve everything that has happened before, but we can do our best to create a sense of stability, to protect whichever direction we're moving towards. We're going to carry, luckily, the new moon in and of itself has no major aspects to Pluto. Mercury aspected Pluto, opposed Pluto on the 2nd. Venus opposes Pluto on the 12th. The next full moon is all about Pluto on July the 21st. But we'll get to that. We know this. It also has tremendous support with the Sun trining Neptune and Mars and Uranus trining the Moon and Pluto. It's exciting. It's transformational. For some people, it might be a little jarring, I will say. But there's so much overwhelmingly positive around it that it's hard to give it a totally challenging or negative connotation. And it's like this new moon. It isn't just all trines. So support after the 5th of July, after this new moon, to move in the direction we want, to release and to move towards. There could be communications, doors could open again. We could hear things, we could start to move in that direction again in a way that we've kind of been blocked through June. The need, the necessity to protect what we're going towards with a certain amount of care and with an eye towards what we're trying to heal are triggers where we lose power related to the direction we want to go and what we want to protect. Very important, so that where the crisis this time around may not come from, or the blockage may not come from the Pisces part of the chart, it could be that Chiron creates a blockage to say, heal and be healed, or else. Integrate. Reclaim your power. And sometimes reclaiming our power is done through assertion. And sometimes that assertion is needed. There's something about the transits that we're dealing with. And some of this could be related to Mars going over Taurus, kind of in your chart. What aspects is it making from Taurus? That could again be an important data point for the story, because Mars, as I said, Mars's aspects are aspects of moving towards goals, but they're also aspects of conflict. Could provide some signs. And Mars energy is very worth thinking about to some extent in some ways, because it kind of encapsulates in and of itself what we're trying to do, moving towards a certain direction and also protecting boundaries. But the protecting of boundaries demands to be done in a way that is healed. When we are in our power, when we are empowered, and when we are empowered in a Venusian way, I don't know that it necessarily requires it's a handshake kind of assertion. It's not really a Martian assertion. It's not a I'm warning you kind of assertion, or this is what I need you to do, or I'm sorry, I'm really upset about this and this needs to be here. It might be more of a How do we build a bridge here? How do I manage this in such a way that we can work together, acknowledging that there may have been issues or challenges or something here is broken, kind of thing. And it would be related to the nature of the action, because it's Venus square Chiron, Venus in Cancer, Chiron in Aries. Those are the two houses that it would be related to. Something going on in the Cancer part of the chart that is a value that could feel a little bit threatened. Or that if it takes action, Venus has to act in order to allow Chiron to continue its healing and complete its healing in the Aries part of the chart. So if you address something from a relationship perspective or a monetary perspective, you may need to come from a healed, whole, complete place. And if you do so, tapping into more of your feminine side, your Venusian side, it may be that you're tapping into the creating harmony, diplomacy, kindness. Let's work together on this principle. And that you can access it more easily because you are in your power again. You are not being fear-based because you are actively working to heal those parts of you related to the Aries part of the chart. And if you don't know what that is, those parts of you, if any of this resonates, that has been broken for a long time due to some sort of conditioning that goes back to early childhood. And certainly a Chiron transit indicates that you are ready to try and understand what that might be, why it occurred, and start to put it to bed and start to see what the patterns are and what is asked of you. Sometimes the healing occurs at the level of recognizing what the trigger was that continued to create the challenge. Because sometimes the healing is about setting boundaries, etc., and being more assertive. But sometimes the healing is about recognizing. It's about recognizing what our triggers are. Because when we act in that triggered way over some part of us that is broken or hurt from childhood, it creates its own chain of events. It creates a pattern that then keeps happening and happening and happening. Sometimes it's an inability to protect ourselves in a situation. Sometimes it's being triggered in such a way that something that other people could handle more easily, you couldn't because it's part of your trigger. And so for you, it makes the situation worse, whereas others are able to glide over it. So what does it mean to be someone who is not triggered by it, or somehow does not, it's a little bit like, as I've given you that example, if you're walking down a street and someone who is kind of out of it and might be a little bit dangerous, but might not, but it's just kind of not, it's kind of out of it. It could be that they're inebriated. It could be that they're tweaking. It could be that they seem violent. Or it's walking towards you. And you could take that as a metaphor of a situation. Do you know how to play dodge? Are you empowered enough to be able to know how to avoid a collision? Or is there something about it that triggers you in such a way that you get involved in a power dynamic or a collision? And you may be very aware of that during July as something that you need to manage in order to move in the direction that you want. Powerful, powerful trines, powerful flow. A new moon trining Saturn is, there's an opportunity there to build a foundation. Saturn puts our nose through the grindstone wherever it is, but by the time it's done with the transit, can really reward us in a way that we expect Jupiter to. And a new moon trine Saturn means some actions could be taken over the next, or initiated over the next 4 weeks, that could contribute to a certain amount of stability in a part of the chart that has been crisis-laden since 2012, but especially accelerating in 2014, 15, 16, 17, and is soon to have the eclipses move there starting September the 17th. And we're going to feel that the week before and after July the 17th of this year. So that's nice that we can actually. And with Jupiter and Mercury trining the nodes, Jupiter trining the south node, Mercury trining the north node, powerful, exciting to be able to move forward again. There's just this Venus square Chiron, and the fact that during this month we will have oppositions to Pluto, and as we head to that full moon, that we just have to watch for this power dynamic struggle, this healing that is needed in order to, you really need to be the keeper of your flame. And that flame is where it is that you want to go and where the opportunity is. And it could be that you choose to address something. It could be you choose to not address something. It could be that you choose to address something harmoniously and extend an olive branch, or extend with a, come from a whole, complete, more healed place that at least acknowledges your triggers. You don't have to, depending on the situation, you don't have to talk about your triggers. You don't have to accept them. You don't have to put something into writing that could come back to hurt. What does it mean to be empowered? Sometimes it's few words. Sometimes it is a vibe. You may even choose to play things much closer to your chest. The priority is not so much to be in action. Even with this Venus opposing Pluto, you don't have to be in communication. The priority is for you to reclaim your energy and your power, your healing, to take action in such a way that it contributes to that. So that may mean action, that could mean inaction, whatever is right for you. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes, wow, I can't remember the last time I did a video this long, but this was fun to do, and I hope you get something out of it. And I hope you're excited for the next month, and especially the next 2 weeks. Actually, the next 3 weeks. And you know what? The next 3 weeks pretty much takes us to the end of July. I say next 3 weeks because, remember, the most productive week is the week after the full moon. The week after a new moon, things are growing. We're still waiting for the energy to come back. There is a definite energetic shift after the new moon. For me, it feels like the wind is right again behind the sails again. But I'm not accelerating. At some point between the new moon and the full moon, I might have 4 or 5 days that are a little bit more balanced. As you head to the full moon, it's almost like productivity is hampered by the sheer amount of whatever it is that you're dealing with. The energies are a bit unwieldy. They might be highly productive, but you may not be quite as productive because the energies are so stretched and full moony. That brings me to the ruler and the dispositor of this new moon is the moon, of course, in its own sign of Cancer. So it'll be nice, you know, this month it's going to be the moon who's the ruler and the dispositor. Next month it's going to be the sun. And with the moon is, in certain astrological traditions, it's really the moon that stands for us and not the sun. And I get it. For those of you who I've encouraged you to work with your lunar return chart as well, pay attention to where the moon is in your natal chart and your lunar return chart at any given time. But know what you're doing. A lunar return chart has to be when the moon... Now you can get a lunar return chart easily on astro.com, for example, but make sure that you're referencing the place where you're currently living. Because it's about what the chart looks like at the time when the moon is conjunct your natal moon in the location where you're at. And that chart, I'm telling you, where the moon is in your natal chart and where the moon is in your lunar return chart will indicate to you what the predominant activity is going to be during the days. You know, the moon is in a certain part of the chart for about 2.5 days. For those 2.5 days, the activity is going to be related to where the moon is transiting in your natal chart and in your lunar return chart. But with the moon, it stands for the level of our energy, our emotional energy. You know, it's the planet that stands for our emotions, our sense of contentment. Mars really stands for our energy and our vitality, but the moon affects our energy and vitality because our emotional life affects our energy and vitality. How we feel about things, how full the moon is, how dark the moon is, how balanced the moon is. Our emotional life is what really has power over us, talking about healing and being less triggered, and making wise and centered decisions. I find that when you have to interpret the moon in the natal chart and where the moon is, it tells you that a client is not going to be contented until affairs related to the house where the moon is in the natal chart are going to the client's satisfaction. And the sign that the moon is in can give you important clues about what brings emotional satisfaction or dissatisfaction for someone who has a moon in Aries, for example. It's a famously discontent moon and discontent nature, powerful in their ability to know what needs to be fixed. Aries is a prime mover. This is not working, this is not working, this is what I need to do, this is what needs to happen, this is what needs to happen. But then as a result of that energy, it's difficult to get or access peace of mind. Knowing that is helpful. For someone who has a Taurus moon, you know, like I do. So the key to contentment is what I'm eating, or kind of emotionally a slow mover, resistant to both happy to have activity and opportunity, but hating disruptions to my routine and having to mobilize quickly on things. Slow and steady, similar pace, and blah, blah, blah. But it's a place of emotional contentment. Of course, in Cancer, a sign that it rules nurture, emotional primacy, protection. So the moon is, so the next 28 days may very well be a time when we are feeling our way through things. And that doesn't mean that we're having meltdowns. Could be quite a powerful way to think of the next 28 days. That what the compass that is leading us through something is actually lunar. We may not have all the facts. We may not be Apollonian. It's not the sun. After August the 4th to September the 2nd, the sun will take rulership and dispositorship because the sun rules Leo. And the sun will be in Leo. But it might be a feeling time, feeling your way through things. Things are not entirely clear, they're not entirely illuminated, but your feelings about things are illuminated and clear and can guide you through. It's a little bit like, it is that swimming pool analogy. It's like guiding you through, it's like you're swimming in the ocean during a full moon, or swimming in a pool, you know, you're moving to the other side. And it's going to be an intuitive moon, emotional moon compass that's going to have the strength to take you through it. Because it could be that certain things that are concrete show up, but you're still going to, especially with that Venus square Chiron, some of the things that you perceive as challenging, what needs to be done, it's going to come up very intuitively for you. This is what I need to do. This is what I need to do. This is what needs to be addressed. I should do this. This is what came up in my dreams. This is how I feel. Maybe this is what I need to do to address this. Maybe I just need to leave that alone. When it is a solar time, it's going to be much more, what do I know? What do I see? That's going to inform things. What needs to be done? Right now, for the next 28 days, what needs to be done, let it arise in a lunar way. Let it bubble up naturally through feeling what's going to make you content, what needs to be done, what do you intuitively feel needs to be done. Don't rely that much on Mercury or the sun to kind of guide you through the next 28 days. I'm just so happy to be able to bring you information about a new moon that's trining Saturn with Mercury and Jupiter trining the eclipse points. Yeah, we've got Venus square Chiron, but it is really, if we look at it the right way, and I do think that there's a right way to look at it and to harness that energy, it is an opportunity to heal something. Very, very needed, very necessary, very important to recognize and become present of our triggers and to act in a much more collected, healed, empowered way. And with Venus, empowered does not have to mean thou shalt not pass. Because that may or may not be coming from an empowered place. You may only have to say thou shalt not pass when you are not empowered and having to exert it. When you are truly empowered, situations don't have to escalate, or they can be resolved in a way where everybody can just exhale. And the question of transgression, and therefore passing or not passing, doesn't even need to arise because we are just able to reach an agreement. And other people have stuff to do that they're moving towards, and you have stuff to do that you're moving towards. Learn, acknowledge, handshake, protect the opportunity, move forward. Happy New Moon in Cancer, everybody. Happy 4th. I know it's a complex time politically. I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Goodness. If you found this video useful, feel free to tell your friends, put the information out about it. It'll be helpful to my channel. If you are interested in me doing a reading for you or making an easy to read version of your chart that you can use as a guide for these videos, my email address is in the description box below. You can email me there for rates and information. There's a thanks button. You can contribute to the channel using that. Like, comment on the videos if you feel so inclined. It gives it more circulation on YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, particularly if you're seeing this on Twitter or Facebook, because at the end of July, I'm going to start posting there. And yeah, next to the subscribe button is a bell icon. If you hover over that, there's a wiggly bell on top. Click on that and you'll be notified. You'll be notified. My battery's going down. Luckily, it hasn't stopped the video. You'll be notified whenever I do a new video. That's all I have to say an hour and a half later. Goodness. Thanks for sticking with me. Take care.